Hey, welcome everybody. So we're going to go through the operation of Autodesk Vault. For those of you that don't know, it's the data management offering from Autodesk, generally used with a number of different Autodesk products, more specifically Inventor, and we'll explain why shortly, but it's quite happy managing the files for a number of different Autodesk products. Okay, so let me just resume my sharing. So hopefully you can all see the screen. What we're going to do is we're going to consider a simple operation, okay, in that we're going to change a design file. Now, I'm going to draw some comparisons with Vault's closest competitor, which is Windows Explorer, a file management tool that most, if not all of us, have used at some point. So we're going to have a look at what happens when we want to change a design file. So we'll make a simple statement: I need to change a design file. And that should hopefully raise a number of questions. So first of all, where is the file? So we have a number of, so we have a number of methods of finding a file within Windows Explorer, none of which are ideal. We obviously do search on a file name. So we've got to have a very carefully constructed file name. We can also search on date created and also the size of the file. We also maybe have a carefully managed folder structure to be able to locate certain files. So where is the design file? We're going to show you in Vault how we can use the power of Vault to find a particular file without having to worry too much about the file name or whereabouts it is. Now, once we found the file, we also need to verify, have we got the correct file? Now, again, in Windows Explorer, we've got the information I mentioned earlier, but we've also got a small thumbnail of the file. We're going to show you how Vault will show you a whole plethora of information relating to that file, such as its history, relationships to other files, a whole host of metadata associated to that file, and also a full preview of the file, helping us verify that we've actually found the correct file within the system. Is it the latest version? Now, again, drawing comparisons to Windows Explorer, we tend to have different methods of doing this. We may append the file name with a version number, and therefore you have a number of different files, all with the version number appended to the file name. Or in some cases, don't even keep the old versions at all. Every time we do an update, just simply overwrite the existing file. So we don't have that rich history of the life cycle of that file. Do I have the authority to change the file? Now, again, we can use folder level security within Windows Explorer, but we also need to consider then what happens if the file's at work in progress, what happens when it's approved, and we often move files around within the folder structures to be able to control who can edit the files and who can just view the files. Now, those of you that use Inventor will understand the pains of physically moving files around within the file system. Vault takes care of all that for us. Will the change affect other design files? Okay, again, drawing the comparison or using the example of Inventor, this also works with AutoCAD, and we can also create manual links, but within Inventor, we can open up an assembly and we can look down the model browser and we can see all the parts within that assembly. That's easy enough. What we can't do is we can't pick on a part and say, which assembly is that used in? The parts themselves are blissfully unaware of any drawings they participate in, any assemblies or sub-assemblies they participate in. So Vault will enable us to perform those checks to help us better understand the implications of making a change. How do I record the change? Well, again, there's various different methods we use now. It may be that we have a spreadsheet somewhere recording the engineering change. We still come across companies that have the carbon copy pads where they handwrite a change order and get it physically signed, walk it around the building, get it physically signed by the relevant parties, and keep that in a plastic wallet along with any marked up prints. Okay, I'll show you how Vault has the facility to record and share that information. And also within the ability to close off or to make files approved, we can also make the change orders approved as well, to sign those off as complete. We can also share the design with relevant people. So this is all about Vault's ethos, which is to getting the right information to the right people at the right time. We're sharing the design with the relevant people. I mentioned moving files between folders earlier on and shuffling something from work in progress to approved or review. And we have the ability within Vault, when we change the state of a file, to say that only certain people can see it. I'll demonstrate that in a second. When we're talking about moving files around within folder structures, within Inventor, we have essentially 5 different file types, 6 if you include both drawing types. Okay, and we know that there are a number of links and dependencies that occur between these files. So at the top we have an assembly, under which we have subassemblies and parts. Within the subassemblies we also have additional parts. Each of the assemblies and parts have associated drawings. The assemblies can also have an exploded view called a presentation file, which in turn can also have a drawing file attached. And by simply making a change to that one part, we can effectively break or update all of these other files. And when I say make a change, I mean rename it or move it to another folder. And we then have 4, 5, 6 files that will then start complaining that it can't find that part. And that's in a very, very simple assembly. If you've got 1,000 parts assembly and you start moving files around between folder structures, you very quickly become tangled in a bit of a file management mess. So we're going to have a look at how Vault manages this. Let's jump in there now. So we'll start actually in Inventor. And we'll start to create a simple part. So nothing new there for those Inventor users. We'll just start a file and we'll just use the simple primitives or the Vault demonstration tools as they're called internally at Autodesk and just create a simple part. Okay, now as soon as we save that part, you'll see we have a Vault tab within Inventor, and both Inventor, AutoCAD, Revit, a lot of the Autodesk products have a client built into the application. So we can see we've got close integration with Inventor and Vault. You can see here it's logged in, otherwise it will tell me it's logged out. We can do a quick check. Yep, I'm logged in into the demo Vault. And at the moment, I don't know that. Nothing has actually told me I'm logged into Vault, and it's not interfering until I actually hit the save button. And Vault Professional will then say, well, we're going to give it a file name. So within Vault, we have the ability to automatically generate file names. QD, in this case, stands for Quadri Design. So it's a customizable file name. And if we say it's project 2021 and click OK, and it will generate the next number in that project for me. You can see it's just, there aren't any so far, so it's picked 0001, and I'll pop it in the Quadra folder. So it's giving me a file name. I do have the option to skip at that point when it presents me with that dialog box, if we just want to call it something a bit more generic than actually include it in my numbering system. But in this particular case, I'm going to give it a number. So I'll hit save, and that's now saved in my, what we call a Vault working folder. So it's saved locally on my machine. It's not yet inside the Vault. We can opt not to put it in the Vault at this stage. If we decide actually don't want to do this anymore, change my mind on this particular design, I'm going to use an existing part and modify it slightly. What I'm going to do is just switch on my Vault browser here so I can see the status of the files within my Inventor environment, and I'm just going to simply check that into Vault. So it's at this point the file then goes down the network and into the Vault server. And I can add a comment here and check the file in. Okay, so the Inventor users amongst you can see just how unintrusive Vault is. It only really got involved when I hit the save button. But now the file's checked in, strictly speaking, I shouldn't be able to change that file because it's now available for checkout by somebody else. So let me go and try and make a change to this file. So if I put a couple of fillets on these corners here, Vault pops up and says, hang on a minute, the file's not checked out. Do you want to check it out now? I can answer no to this. I might just be experimenting with something with no intentions of keeping the changes, or I intend to do a save copy as later. Okay, so what Vault's doing now is it's asking me if I want to check the file out to make the changes. I'm going to say yes, so that will commit the changes. The file's now checked out. I can see that is indicated in my Vault browser. So this is the browser that's embedded in the in Inventor in the product. Okay, so I can see it ticked, so it's checked out to me. Little asterisk indicates that it requires saving. So if I hit save, And then if I can just move this out of the way, the zoom controls are getting in the way now. If we can go to Vault and then say check in. So each time I need to work on the file, I check it out. And then when I'm ready, I check it back in. Now, there is a significant benefit to this, especially at the moment with us all working from home and in various different locations. Once I've checked the file out to my laptop here, I can disconnect it from the network, go and take it to site, take it home, and I can continue to work safe in the knowledge that everybody else back in the office knows that that file's checked out to me and that I'm working on it. And I don't need access to Vault while I'm working on it. Because it's saved in my local working folder, I can keep hitting save and just keep working on it until I get back to the network and I'm connected back to the network and I can check back in. Indeed, some of our customers are actually doing that. The ones that have slow connections from home are checking the files out that they want, disconnecting from the VPN, and then continuing to work at local speeds without having to worry too much about the network speeds. So major benefit there to using that local working folder, as it were, like a local cache. So we've added some fillets. I'm going to pop a comment in there. It's not compulsory. We can add what I call a breadcrumb trail, so it helps us understand how we built this model up. Not just for me, if I hand this design over to somebody, they can see how I've built it up, but also if I come back to this design 6 months later and need to remind myself how I've built it up. Okay, so I now have a file that I've created and I've checked into Vault. So let's go and have a look at that. Right. So if I just bring up my Vault client now. So this is the Vault Explorer client. So we have a number of clients. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a client that plugs into Inventor, one that plugs into AutoCAD, one that plugs into Revit. We even have one that plugs into PowerPoint. I brought up a PowerPoint earlier. Okay, if I bring this over, this is the PowerPoint I was just showing you earlier on, and you can see I've got an Autodesk Vault tab within Microsoft Office. So we have a number of clients that allow us to interact within the product, interact with Vault within the actual product itself. Okay, so we're looking at the Vault Explorer client now. So this is a standalone client that allows us to browse and to interact with Vault. And it's no coincidence that it actually looks like Outlook. Autodesk licensed the Outlook interface from Microsoft, the thinking being that there is a familiar interface there that most of us, if not all of us, have used at some point, if not use every day. So Autodesk chose to take this route so that we have some sort of familiarity when we start working within the products. Okay, so the ability to browse through the Vault, you can see down here we have a folder structure, so I can browse through the folders. Whilst we don't need folders, I mentioned earlier on, we don't need a careful folder structure or anything special regarding file naming because we've got other ways of searching for files. We still have the ability to create folders and store files in folders so that we have that continuity if we're all used to storing files in that way. If we look in this Quadra folder, come down here, we can see there's my QD 2021-0001. That's the file I was working on earlier. We can see there a thumbnail of the file, and we can see the history of the file. We can even see the comments that I added when I checked it in. Okay, so we'll look at that in more detail in a second. So while we're in this Explorer client, we're going to have a look at some of the searching tools. The ability to find the files. Remember we said that finding the files was quite an important aspect of working with data. So if I come up to the designs folder here, so this shows me all the different files, different folders we have within my Vault, and I can start typing a search term in my quick search window there. So I type the word front, and it finds all the files where the word front appears somewhere within the database. And you can see it's not even visible here at the moment. So what I'll do is I'll just switch on another field here. Let's go and find the description field. I can't remember whether it's description or title. I've put that in, so let me just bring them both in. Okay, so you can see there we have the description field, which contains a full description of the part. So again, we're not having to worry about squeezing as much useful information in the file name as possible. Clicking on one of these files, we can see we've got a whole host of information associated to that file. These are all customizable. These are called user-defined properties. As the name suggests, we can have as many of these properties as you like. We can have cost codes in here. We can have cost centers. We can have building numbers. We can have, we can store any sort of information you like in here. And it can just be plain text. It can be numbers. It can be dates. So it is essentially an SQL database. So we can search for the files based on any of these entries. So if we do a search for front and arm, we can see now the more information we put into that search box, the more it reduces the list. This is what's called an AND search. Okay, so an AND search will reduce the results, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to home in on the particular files that we're interested in. Okay, so it'll find all files where the word front and arm appears somewhere in the database. It may be that it's in the file name. In this case, it is. It looks like it's in both the file name and the description. Okay, it could be in any of these properties, whether they're visible here or not. Okay, we could actually do front or arm. An OR search, we've got to specify an OR search, and is implied. So an OR search will expand the results. Okay, so we can use the Boolean separators OR and we don't need to use because it's implied by default. You see, I do it like that. Now it could be that I want to be more specific. I don't just want to search the whole database. I want to search a specific field. And the easiest way to do that, if I just clear that search, is to expand what's called the query builder. So I'll expand the little chevron button there, and I can now see the fields specified. The multiple properties just there is the same as that box just there. Okay, so if I type in front in there, it's just the same as what I've done within the quick search box. Now I can be more specific. I can say I want the word front to appear in the file name. Okay, so it must appear in the file name. So all those numerous files it found earlier that weren't actually in the file name, but they were in the description, it'll exclude those. Okay, so we're only searching where its file name contains front. Now I can also search in multiples. If I put the mirror in there, oh, there aren't any. There was something like Paul. No, there we go. Okay, so we can add additional search terms in here. We can see if I drop this down, we can have access to all the different user-defined and system properties as well. So we can find, I don't know, maybe revision. So I can find all files where there are revision 1. Okay, so it's found all the revision ones where the word front appears in the file name. So we can see how we can build these search terms up. Okay, now we've got a few that don't have a description in there. Now that's not great when we're actually coming to release the files. We want this information in. The usefulness, the efficacy of the database is only such that if we fill that information in, so it's the old garbage in, garbage out. We don't put the information there, not easy to find afterwards. Now we can put certain checks within Vault to say, well, it's a work in progress at the moment, that's fine. We might not have the information yet. But when we come to actually release or even review that file, we can put a check in there to say, hang on, you can't go any further until you've put the description in there because that's what's needed when it becomes a released document. Okay. Now what we can also do is we can do a search for files that don't have a description. Now in here we're just doing a search for a positive search for terms. What I'm going to do is collapse that down. We'll just close that search down, and I'm going to use the find dialog box. Just go up on my other screen. Here we go. Now this adds another layer of search capability where we could search the properties previously. We can also search using certain conditions now. So I can say condition contains, does not contain, is empty, is not empty, is, so matches, greater than, less than. And if we were to pick a date field, for instance, so let's find created date, we can now see we've got a number of relative search terms. Before, after, on or before, yesterday, today. Tomorrow might seem like a weird one to search for. Files created tomorrow. That actually has a valid use within the ECO environment because you can post date engineering change orders, maybe to coincide with the change of a standard or the consumption of existing stock. So we've got a number of relational dates there, plus we have a date picker that pops up if we use the date field. In this case, I want to use the description field, and we want to find all files where the description is empty. I want to add that to the list, and I can stack up as many of these search terms as I like. Okay, so again, we can find, I can use description again. No, I can't. No point doing that. We'll say file name contains front. Okay, so again, this is an AND search. So it'll find all files where the description is empty and the file name contains front. If I hit find now, we can see it's found 12 objects. Okay, now this may be a search I want to perform regularly. So rather than have to keep coming in and setting that up, I can save this. And we'll call it enter description, save as folder. And what it does is it saves it over here in my search folders. And if I close that down now, every time I hit that, it will rerun the search. It isn't just saving the list, it's rerunning the search for me. Let's just expand those columns. So we have a number of files that it's found that don't have a completed description. So as a manager, as maybe an approver of the drawings, what I can do is run that search at the end of each project before I push the file through to approve and say, hang on, we've got some information missing here. We've got descriptions missing. Now, with regards to those descriptions, if I just pop back to the file I made earlier and open, you notice the description's empty. So let's check that file out. So by double clicking on it, it's launched it for me again in Inventor. The file's checked out to me, so I can now edit it. And if we come in here and change the iProperties within Inventor, and we change the description to demo part. Okay. Save and check in. Okay, so that file is now checked back into Vault. If we come back to Vault, just do a refresh, we can see Vault will harvest information from your files. It can do this with all the iProperties. We can create mappings between the iProperties and the properties within Vault. We can also map properties from your AutoCAD attributes within your title blocks as well. So it can automatically harvest the information, therefore you're not having to put it in twice, which eliminates spelling mistakes, errors, mismatch errors with the actual property information. So the information that you put into Inventor can be automatically harvested by Vault. Okay. Now, if we just have a look at the panel below here, we've used the search tools. We've used all the rich metadata that's associated to the files to locate those files. So down here, we have a number of panels that help us verify that we've got the correct file. So if we look at a particular file, let's look at this one, for instance, machined part. This is just one individual part. It's not including an assembly. But you can see down here the history of that file. Okay, there aren't a vast amount of changes, but you can see subtle changes within the thumbnails there. And we also have the comments that automatically get added as we pass a file through its life cycle. So we're keeping all the history. Up at the top here, we always see the latest file. Okay. Well, we certainly do if we're entitled to see it. We've got the rights to see the files. Okay, so we see the latest files at the top here, and down here we see what has happened to that file in its history. So we've been a property edit there. It was put under review here, released to manufacturing just there. Okay. We can also see, in this particular case, we have users and where used. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a different file now. We'll come into an assembly and we'll pick a part. You can see there it says drive casing. Okay, we can see the history of that drive casing. What I can do is I can say where used. Now this is that particular application that we can't do outside of Vault. Inventor can't even do this. We can't pick on a part and say which assembly is that used in. I can now see which assembly and indeed which drawing that particular part is used in. Now the major benefit there is it helps me understand the implications of making a change to that part. If a part is used in 5 different assemblies and I'm only aware of the one assembly I've placed it in, then I can click on where used and I can find out that actually I'm going to affect 4 other assemblies by making this change. So I can go and contact all the people. I can see who it was created by. So I can go and contact the relevant people and discuss that particular part change. Or what I can do is I can create a copy of that part and then edit that one. Either way, I've better understood the implications of making that change and haven't gone and broken 4 assemblies without really thinking it through. So I can go and jump to that file. If I right click and say go to folder, it jumps to that file. There's the assembly. Now I can click on the uses tab and we can see all the parts that that particular assembly uses. So we're able to see relationships. This also works with XREFs within AutoCAD. So if you check an AutoCAD file in with XREFs, Vault will keep track of those links and dependencies too, and you can use the users and where used to understand those dependencies. Okay. The change order tab we're going to jump over for now. We'll come back to that one later. I'll demonstrate that in its entirety a little later on. And the preview tab allows us to actually view the file, so we can see the thumbnail there. When I click on the thumbnail, we get a better view. We'll do it if it's updated. Just hit update. Give it a second. So what we're actually viewing down here is not the native file. If you've ever opened up a large assembly, you know sometimes they can take an amount of time to open while it resolves all the links. What we're looking at here is a lightweight visualization file, okay, called a DWF. And this allows us to view the file very quickly. We can navigate around the file. We can zoom in and out of the file. We can also take measurements off the file. So we can snap to it. We can take measurements like so, directly from the preview without actually having to go in there. Okay. So another tool to allow us to better understand or to help us verify that's the file we're looking for. Clicking the full view button will launch it in a full window. Maybe some graphical glitches with this. I think this occurs because of the zoom sharing. Without the zoom sharing, this comes up without any issues. Okay, so we can see the file in more detail. We can even sort of select parts. Okay, we can open it in full design review as well. Design review is a free viewer that allows you to view DWFs. So these DWFs can be shared with others outside of the organization and viewed within design review. Viewed and measured, and they can also mark up, add red lines, and send that review back. Okay, so another tool to allow us to preview the files. Okay. Now then, we talked about how we can manage the state of the files. How do we work with release management? We take a file from work in progress to review to released. What are the implications? How do we do that? So let's have a look at the file that I created earlier on. So the 2021 file, let's do a quick refresh. Let's just make sure that's checked back in. Yep, I checked that back in, and it's at work in progress. Now at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch another Vault client. So this is a second Vault client that I've got running, and I'm going to log this in as somebody else. So we're going to log this in as Production Pete. Okay. So Production Pete is now logged into the Vault, obviously on a different machine. And if we scroll down, that QD 2021-0001, we can see is not visible in this window. And indeed, you'll notice that Production Pete can only actually see released drawings or released files, because we don't want somebody in production working to files that are work in progress. And this is what's called state-based security. So the state is released, okay? Or in this particular case, the state of this file is work in progress. So Production Pete can't see the file. I'm just going to minimize that window down for a second. And what we do when we're ready, we can actually, I'll just have to do a quick synchronize because I don't have my jump processor running. In fact, no, I'll not run that just yet. I'll actually allow the error message to come up. So I'm going to change state. Apologies, wrong screen. And we're going to change it from work in progress to for review. Okay, so effectively we're pushing it to a review state. Now, I get an error at this stage. This is what I was about to fix, but I've decided not to, so I can show you the error. So this is saying some properties do not match predefined criteria. So this is where we have that check in place to say, hang on a minute, you can't push it through to the next stage yet until all the relevant information is filled in and synchronized. And I can actually see that we have a mismatch here. This little luggage tag shows me there's a non-compliance. So I'm just going to do a synchronize of that file to allow me to push it through to the next state. Okay. So it's updated the file property for me. The little non-compliance has disappeared now, so we're able now to change its state. Now this is a check that I've built into the lifecycle to say don't allow it to move forward until the files have been synchronized. So the revisions on the actual drawing match the revisions in Vault. The titles are completed, things like that. So all these little checks we can make to make sure the properties are compliant before we move it through to the next stage. Now I'm allowed to move it through to review. The file's gone through to review. Production Pete's not a reviewer, so he still can't see the file. Okay, so the QD 2021 is not there yet. So the next stage, change the state. We've reviewed the file. We're now going to release it. You can see I've got the option to bump it back to work in progress, effectively rejecting it from the review stage. Now I want to push it through to released. So we're actually changing the state. This is the step which a lot of people use folders within Windows Explorer to adjust. So they'll move files to different folders. But as we've learned with Inventor, certainly, with any file that's got links and dependencies, you start doing that, you start breaking the assemblies. So let's release this file. So we can see the file state has now changed to released. If I come back now and just quickly refresh Production Pete's window, we can see he's now able to see that file. So production are now able to work to this new model, this new file that we've created. Okay, so that's now released at revision 1. So in order to actually start making a change to that, it won't allow me to check it out. You'll notice, again, Pete sees these files as being locked. So they're all padlocked to those, so they're not editable. There is one file there that's not actually in a life cycle, okay? That doesn't have the life cycle associated to it. This allows me to manage different files in different ways. So our engineering design files within Vault can be managed with a very carefully structured life cycle where it goes from a work in progress stage to maybe a peer checking stage to a review stage to a customer approval stage to an approved stage. So you can have these different states within the life cycle. We can also limit who can transition. So maybe the engineer can take it from work in progress to review, but then a team leader is the only person that can actually move it from review to approved. So those, not only can we manage who can see what within the states, we can also manage who can transition to the different states. So in this particular case, we've got a simpler file. It's just in fact, it's just a photograph of our offices in Accrington. Doesn't need any sort of life cycle, so it's just in a what we call a base category that has no life cycle associated to it, so everybody can see that, including Production Pete. Maybe memos, other files relating to the business, but maybe not needing quite as strict a life cycle as the engineering files, can follow a simpler route, maybe just a work in progress and released. So we can see what revision it's at and whether it's being edited or whether it's been released. We don't require a review stage. So we've got quite a lot of flexibility in the way that we configure our Vault. Okay, so speaking of making changes and up-revving a file, let's go and have a look at up-revving this one. So we've got this file that's set to released currently. If I change its state now, I can do it here or I can do it with the toolbar at the top there. From released, we can go to work in progress. Now I'll just explain a couple of other options we have here. We have a quick change option and we have an obsolete option. Now when I go to work in progress, the revision is going to be bumped automatically to Rev 2. Okay, so I can start working on Rev 2. Now, if I've released a file and then immediately spot a spelling mistake, we know that file hasn't gone anywhere. So what I can do is I can put it into quick change, and again we can make sure that only somebody in authority can do this so that everyone doesn't just take shortcuts. Human nature is that it will generally find the path of least resistance, and if there's a shortcut we'll take it. So we can limit who can do quick change. What it allows us to do is edit the file but not bump the revision. Okay, again that's an optional state, we don't have to have that in. If it's a security breach, then we can take that out. So work in progress will bump the revision for me. Quick change will allow me to make a quick spelling mistake correction without having to up-rev the model. Obsolete, we're actually making the part obsolete. I mean, we don't consider these old versions down here to be obsolete, okay, because we only ever see the latest there. Obsolete means that part is no longer in production, no longer required. so we can have that port in obsolete state. We can resurrect it if necessary. Again, we can have limited ability to pull that from obsolete back to released again, or to work in progress if we prefer. So these states are all fully configurable. Let's continue now and put it back to work in progress. So I want to edit this file. Okay, so we can see that file's moved back to work in progress. It's been bumped automatically to Rev 2, and that file we can now check out and edit again. Okay, so I can add a feature to that, so poke a hole in it. Extrusion. Save and check in. And again, I can do that either through the little Vault tab here, or I can just go to my Vault ribbon and say check in. Added extrusion. Click OK. And that's now gone back into Vault. Let's come back to Vault and just do a refresh. Now we'll also note, because that file's gone back to work in progress, production peak can no longer see it. So again, we're working on that file now. It's been withdrawn from production, and until it becomes released again, production peak won't be able to see it. So that file's at work in progress. Rev 2, we can see the thumbnail there with the added extrusion. I don't have to show all the versions. Every time I check a file out, change it, save it, check it back in, we get a new version. Almost like a backup file, if you like. If I untick that box, we just see the bits that the business are interested in, the different revisions as opposed to versions. Okay, so Vault will retain an awful lot of information. We want to be able to see as much information on that particular part as possible. So not only does it keep the versions, the revisions, it also keeps the intermittent changes as well. We can purge those out if you're concerned about it taking up too much space in the system. We can clear those out periodically. Okay, so that's a work in progress. I can see the little non-compliance again because the revision's not synchronized back yet. So I shall just do that manually rather than waiting for the system to do it. Okay, so that's now synchronized back. Now that just means it's pushing the revision back into the file. Because Vault's moved that file forwards now, the revision being pushed back into the file for me. Let's change its state, push it through to review. And then finally release it. Obviously, in real terms, there'd be a bit of a delay in that particular process while whoever was responsible for reviewing the file actually reviewed it. Release the file. It's now released at revision 2. And once again, production Pete can see the file at revision 2. You can also see the history of the file should he choose to and see what changes were made. Okay, so that's pushing a file through its life cycle. Now, what I didn't do then, I've not enforced changes through the ECO system. We can do that. We can say that you're only allowed to put it from release to work in progress if you've raised an ECO against it in order to enable the flow of the presentation. I don't enforce that in this particular case. What I am going to do, though, is I am going to raise an engineering change order against a file within my Vault. So what I have, I'll just bring this onto the other screen. So I have an email. I've received an email saying that there's a dimension missing off this particular drawing. Okay. Hole size is missing from the drawing, please correct. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my Autodesk Vault tab here. We're just going to log Outlook into the Vault. And I'm going to check the email into Vault. I'm going to put it, this is the guitar tuner, so I'm going to put it in the tuner folder. Okay, so 2 files successfully checked in. The 2 files are the MSG file, the message file, and the associated image, because the image is attached up there. Let's just pop that over there. And if we come to the tuner folder, we can see the email and the image has now been checked into the Vault. So what I'm going to do now is, we know that we need to fix this drawing. I'm actually not going to fix the drawing. I'm just going to go through the motions of raising an ECO. I've already shown how you can change state and edit files. What I am going to do though is log in as the right person. So I'm in production Pete here. That could have caused me a headache. So back to my correct client. Okay, so this is the drawing in question. What I'm going to do is raise an ECO, an engineering change order, sometimes called ECNs, ECRs, engineering change request. Sometimes called all of them. So some will have an engineering change request, which will then change to an engineering change order. The terminology varies from company to company, but this predominantly, this essentially just allows me to document the change. The facility I showed you a few minutes ago with the state changes, that allows us to control the change. The ECOs allow us to document the change. So let's raise an ECO against this tuner drawing. So we'll come down to add to change order to a new one. I can place it onto an existing change order if I have one in place. I don't, so we'll create a new one. It's automatically generated the next number for us. So 7 is the next number in this particular vault. And we'll just add some information into the change order. A bit like an email is this. So you've got a subject line, so it's a brief description of the issue, dimension, and then sort of detailed description. That relatively correctly, I'll do. Due date, this is mentioned earlier on with the searching, the ability to search for tomorrow. So I can post date my ECO. Again, this could coincide with the change of a standard in the middle of July, or the consumption of existing stock. So we'll continue to work on a particular drawing until that stock's complete. Let me just shut the email down and I don't keep getting notifications. Okay. I'm going to leave it on the today's date. Down here, we've got a number of user-defined properties. These are a couple of examples that customers have asked for in the past. Reason for change, it's a drop-down list. Error correction, customer request or design change. In this case, it's an error correction. Stock disposition, well, it doesn't really affect the stock, so we're going to leave that blank. You can see the options I've got there: deplete, rework, and scrap. I can have as many of these as you like, as required. So we can take an existing engineering change process, examine what sort of information you capture, and recreate that within this environment. Okay, so let's move on to the records tab of the ECO. So this allows us to add any other files that will be affected by this change. If it was a part file we were changing, we should really go and edit the assembly and any assembly drawings and associated drawings to that part file. So what I can do is I can right click and add related, and it will go and find any files that are related to this particular file. And I can go and tick boxes to add any of the relevant files. I don't need to in this particular case because it's just a simple annotation change to the drawing. But this allows me, rather than to go and have to make a note of all the relationships, we've got a built-in tool to allow us to find them and then go and select the relevant files that are also going to be updated as a result of this change. I can also go and add them manually by browsing or searching for files within the vault. As I said, I only need this one file on this ECO. The comments tab. At the moment it's empty. The comments tab will be automatically populated as we move this ECO through its life cycle. There is also a particular status of a participant within the ECO that allows you to do nothing but review the information in the ECO and add a comment. You can't progress it, you can't change the ECO, but you can just simply add comments, review and add comments. It might be the MD. You don't want to give them control over the actual files and start editing stuff, but they may want to actually review and add a comment, such as okay, so they may want to add comments such as that. Now this box you see here, it's saying notification not configured. This if that was configured, because I'm working on a workstation, not a server here, it actually allows us to send out notification emails to the relevant participants on the ECO list. So this is actually an email that it would send out. So even if somebody's not actually in the Vault client, they will still get an email to say there's a virtual ECO on your put it on your radar, so you need to attend and do some work with it. So it'll notify the relevant people that they've got an ECO on their work list, and you'll see actually it'll appear in a work list later on. Okay, so the MD's just added a message there. Next we come to the Files tab, not to be confused with the Records tab. The Records tab adds files which will be changed by this ECO. The Files tab adds any supporting documentation. This would be a good place to put those emails. So let's go and find the email and the associated image. So now if we click on the email, we can even see a preview of the email in here. Okay, the image is missing there, but it's actually separated out here into a separate file entry. Okay, again, we get some slight anomalies here. I don't know if you might be able to see that, and I can't, I'm not sure. But when Zoom's not running, or the Zoom screen share is not running, that appears in there as the actual image. Okay, I can also see that a Windows update causes me a bit of an issue. We've also got markup tools in here that allows us to redline this file. Again, unfortunately, a Windows update occasionally breaks those, so I'll need to go and fix that. We'll leave that alone for now. So we could actually add red lines and save this as a separate redline file. So I'd have 4 files in here, the actual drawing itself, we'd have the email, we'd have an associated image, and also a redlined file in here as well. Okay, so the next tab we have is routing. And routing allows us to define who's involved in this process. And it might be that for certain projects, we have a certain group of people. So in this case, we've got Desmond Designer, we've got Manny Manager, and Production Pete, who've all got different roles within this particular project. And we can see Desmond is a responsible engineer, and this means an engineer responsible for making the changes. He's also a change requester. He can actually raise a request for a change, as can everybody else. Most people are in there as change requesters. That doesn't necessarily mean it will be actioned, because the change administrator then decides whether or not it's to be actioned or whether it's a known issue that is too expensive to fix, and we're just happy to set about it with a file and a hammer when we get on site. Now, it could be that for project B, maybe the same people but different roles, maybe additional people. Senior editor wasn't there before. So each project can have different people involved in the process. You can see I've got one for training there for all our training machines, training 1, training 2, and so on, so that they can participate in the process as well. Just to leave it as default, I'm logged in as the administrator, so I can do everything with this particular ECO. The next tab, the status tab, just simply shows us the status of the file. The yellow box shows us the current state, so it's currently at the create stage. So I can hit save. So ECO, lots of zeros and a 7, is now at the create stage. I may not have all the information. It may take me a couple of days to get all the information for that ECO together. So a couple of ways I can get back at that. With the file selected, we jumped over the change order tab earlier on. We can look at that now. So that'll record any change orders that are actually in progress or complete against that file. Okay, so if we're being audited by ISO or EU standards, we could be audited by a customer or a design authority, nuclear authority, for instance. And they could say, show me all the changes that occurred on that drawing. And we'd see all of the ECOs with all of the supporting documentation, the information relating to the change, which files were affected, any comments relating to this change, all the supporting documentation, and who's involved. So we'll very quickly be able to lay our hands on the information relating to that change. Okay. We can also go to the change orders list. This will show me all the change orders, including the one that's currently in progress. You can see there are 3 close change orders in that list that have occurred previously. If I just grab that before it disappears. If I'm running the client, just as a short aside, if I'm running the client and even if I've got the client minimized, as with Outlook, if you get an email, you can have a little pop-up appear in the bottom right-hand corner, as is done here. So there's a little pop-up occurred showing me that there's a change order that requires my attention. Okay, I can click on that and it will take me to the Vault, the relevant area in the Vault client, and take me to that change order. I can also see it's appeared on my work list over here, showing me that I've got a virtual ECO on my virtual desktop to actually action. Now, we've got all the relevant information together, so I want to edit that again, so I can edit it, add some more stuff in here. So we'll just add including tolerance in there, so save that. And what I can now do is I can submit it to its next stage. So if I just bring up the status tab here, so we can see its next stage is the open stage. So there you can see I've got the submit button. And again, we get an email notification to the change administrator to say there's an email landed on your desk to do something with. We can see that's now moved to the open stage. At this stage, it's still not in play. We still haven't decided whether or not we're going to action it. So the change administrator will now decide, yep, that change is relevant. Let's move it to the work phase. Or no, it's not. It's too expensive to fix. Let's put it in the cancel bin. You can also see the change administrator has a fast track to approve as well. This is for those situations where you may have performed the change on a Saturday morning, ready for a factory acceptance test on a Monday, and you're just making sure that all the paperwork's in order on Monday morning. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to simply right-click, and we're going to respond by submitting it. So we're just going to submit it for work. We're not going to cancel it. We're not going to fast-track it. We're just going to submit it for work. And at this point, the responsible engineers will get notified that there's some work to be done on a file. We can also see as we're moving this file through its life cycle, comments are being added. So who, what, and when is automatically being added to that comments list within this ECO. Okay, so again, the next stage, the work's being done. So next we'll move that out and submit it to the review stage. So this is the review, not for the files themselves. Once it's into the work stage, the files will go through their own state-based lifecycle. The review stage is just to make sure that all the files within the ECO have been actioned. And then finally, well, penultimately, we go to the approved stage. And you might think, why is there a separate stage to close it? Well, when we're actually using this routing, it may be that for certain files, again, nuclear, military, any of those kind of government files may require what we call unanimous approval. So anybody that's an approver, there might be 3 approvers. So if there are 3 approvers, then it may be that all 3 approvers must approve this file before it can be closed off. So I've approved it, but it was now sat in the approved state, waiting for all 3 approvers to say, yep, that's approved, before it can be closed. Now we can see here, unanimous approval is not required, therefore we can just simply close the file. So the change order is now closed off and complete. So that's the complete life cycle of raising and actioning a change order. And again, we can come back to this file, we can click on the file, click on its change order tab, and see all the supporting documentation associated with that change. We can see all the comments that have now been added. Had I been logged in as the relevant people at each stage, then we'd have a different names in the created by. So Manny Manager might be in the open stage because he's sent it for work. Desmond Designer could have changed it. Manny Manager again to review it and approve it. And then finally it's closed off by maybe a director. So different login names will appear in the created by. And again, we can see when it was done and what was done at each stage. That'll also appear in my full change order list over here. So that's now closed off. We can go back and review the other one. Let's go and see what these are. So reduce corner rads to 15 mil. So what was this? So we can see the changes that were made to this particular file. We can see that the stop was scrapped because the radius was too large. You see which files were affected. In this case, we've got a part and a drawing that was affected. I could actually right-click and say go to folder and jump to that file to have a look at it. So there's the part. So I can very quickly navigate to the files. Back to the change order. That was the change order we're just looking at. We can see there, we've got Desmond Designer, Manny Manager, all involved in these different stages. This is an example of a marked up file, I think. Let's have a look. Okay, I'm having some graphical weirdness with the Zoom sharing. And the different routing tables, so we can see who's involved at each stage. So all the information is gathered and collected within either next to the file or within one list. So again, if you're being audited, it's very easy to pull this information up and review all the associated information related to that change. Okay, so that's the ECO environment. Let's have a look now. Let's tidy my screen up a little bit. I've got stuff everywhere. Okay, so what we've looked at so far is the ability to share our design data, okay, with other users. I can pick on assemblies, and we can see the different files that that assembly uses. What we're not actually seeing though is a bill of materials. What I can do is I can take an assembly and I can create a bill of materials from that assembly. So if I took the tuner as an example, okay, we can right click and we can assign item. What that does is that looks at the model file and builds a bill of materials for me of that particular item. So not only do we see which parts are involved, we can also see quantities. In this particular case, there's only one of everything. I'll show you a more complex bill of material in a second. So we can see there that we've got quantity one of everything. This is also what it's looking at here is this is the manufacturing BOM. We can also add information to this, okay, which turns it into the full product BOM. So let's just save this. So I've now shared the bill of materials, and this can be viewed outside of the design office by others, by the purchasing department, by production, within the item master. So the item master shows us all of the files associated. So these are the files I've just created today, the items I've just created now. These are ones I've created earlier. Okay. So let's have a look at a larger assembly. So this is an item. We can see it's been itemized. If we just look at a file that hasn't, okay, there's a little column here that shows whether or not that's linked to an item. If I come down to the tuner that I've just itemized, we can see that those files are linked to an item. Similarly, if I come in here, I can see this file is also linked to an item. And if I control click on there, it takes me straight to it. Now, rather than have to go and keep finding that particular item, I'm going to drag and drop it to my shortcuts. So no matter where I am in the vault, I can go and jump to that item at any time. There it is. Let's just double click on that. And we can see under bill of materials, these are all the parts. We can see there are a lot more. We've got some with 4s and 2s, and if we expand some of these. So we've got a full structure bill of materials now, showing the sub-assemblies and so on. So we can drill down to the sub-assemblies and see how many of each sub-assembly requires. What I can also do, it's possible that the engineers within the design office are fully aware of how to manufacture one of these components, but aren't perhaps necessarily aware of additional things that get added to that package before it gets shipped to the customer. Let's say, for instance, that we come in here. I'm going to edit the bill of materials. I'm going to add a row from existing item. Do a search for Ofcom. We can see there's a part there with that's already associated to an item, and I know that this actual assembly that we're looking at here is in a remote control car. So I know that's a certificate. Just have a look at that file. Yeah. So this is actually the radio certificate for this particular item. So it's entirely possible, again, that the engineers aren't aware that that's required within the context of this assembly. So it may be that somebody in order fulfillment adds this in later. Okay. We can also create new items on the fly. Again, somebody in purchasing could do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new item, and it's going to be an assembly, and it's going to be an RC car spares kit. I can't remember whether I've got the title or description in the list there, so I'll put both in. Okay, so what I can now do is I'm actually creating a virtual assembly within Vault, and I'm going to add a number of rows from existing items. I'm going to do a search for battery. And we can see a number of items have been found with the word battery somewhere. I can't even see it. It's probably in the description somewhere. Now, just to help me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch on a thumbnail. That'll more easily help me identify the actual parts I want. So I can see there's individual parts there. There's some batteries. Now I can see actually those top 3 parts make up that assembly. So I want to give them a spare battery cradle and also some spare batteries. So let's add those both to the materials, and we can see that's coming in as assembly. So that's the battery cradle. I'm going to be generous. I'm going to give them 2 lots of spare batteries in this spare kit and hit save. Okay, so without actually going into Inventor, without going into a CAD product, what I've just done is I've created a virtual assembly. What I can do now is I can go back to my RC car. Let's edit this and go and add my spares kit. Come here. There it is. Add the spares kit to the bottom of the bill of materials. So now this bill of materials contains all the files that were created in Inventor, plus a radio certificate and a radio compliance certificate and the spares kit with the extra batteries and the extra battery cradle. Okay. Previously, what people have done is they've actually created assemblies, sub-assemblies with Inventor that are hiding off the screen somewhere, so you don't see them in drawings, to actually generate this within the bill of materials, whereas Vault can actually do this now virtually without having to use a workaround within the CAD application. Okay, I can see we're running over time slightly, so we're really finished now. Last thing I want to look at is the thin client. I bring up and click on the Vault client there. So what we're doing here is logging into Vault. We're going to log in to my server, localhost, and log into the demo Vault, and I'll use the password. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm viewing the Vault through Firefox, but most importantly, I'm not consuming a license. This will allow me to view the Vault in read-only mode. I can't participate. I can't pass files through a lifecycle change. I can't raise ECOs. But what I can do is I can view files. I can browse and search the Vault, and I can view files without actually consuming a Vault license. So if you've got 10 licenses, 1,000 people could do this in theory, assuming your network could stand it. So in here we can see all the files we've created, including the one I created earlier on today. There's the file. Okay, we can even go and find an assembly. Let's go and find that lower assembly. Assuming it's actually, maybe it's not released. There it is. And we can use the uses and where used to find all the parts within that assembly. So I may want to go to the impeller, this blower, find that particular file. I can now find where it's been used. It's been used in that assembly. So again, I can navigate backwards and forwards between parts and assemblies. And in this case, the assembly is used in a drawing. So I can navigate to the drawing. See how easy it is to actually navigate between different files within the Vault using the web client. And we, of course, we have the same search tools as we have, or very similar search tools. I can come up here, and as we did before, type front, and it finds all the files where the word front appears somewhere in the database. Okay. So again, this is a very convenient, easy to use. It's designed for infrequent use for people who dip in here every now and then. So it's designed to be easy to use with just one sort of Google search there. You can use a more advanced search and search very specific fields. Okay. Most people tend to just type in a search term here, find the file they're after. This is part of the RC car, so if you say where used, see it goes up to the chassis, which then goes up to the body. There's the battery pack. And that found earlier on. Look in the chassis, there's the actual battery bracket that we offered up in the spares kit. Okay, and those are the 3 parts that we saw it pick up on when we created the spares. Okay. So that concludes the Vault demonstration. We'll just jump over and see if any QA questions have come in. Nothing so far. So hopefully that's been useful. It's given us a good overview of the functionalities within Autodesk Vault, the integration within the products, and the way we can manage the change. We can manage the change. We can also document the change. We can publish both the designs and the bill of materials. No problem at all. Thank you for attending. Bye-bye.